monumental matchup between the Louisville Cardinals and SMU Mustangs takes place in week 13. And these are two teams that are really fun to watch when they're playing at their peak. SMU is still in the ACC championship discussion, which is not something that we would have talked about especially halfway through the season or even the first half of the season. I don't think a lot of people anticipated that the Mustangs were still going to be in that conversation. And Louisville, they are on the outside looking in. Unfortunately, their ACC title hopes are done, but they can play spoiler to an SMU team that still has it very much in control for themselves. They currently sit at 5-1 in conference play, which is tied with Pitt. Virginia and Georgia Tech are 6-1. So they have a chance to be tied for first place here. And there are 2 games left for these two teams. And it's going to be interesting to see which one of them can make it, because also the winner of the ACC championship is going to get into the college football playoff. And I don't think a lot of people anticipated that SMU was going to be a potential playoff team this year, especially after what we saw at the beginning of the year. You went to the playoff last year, you weren't living up to expectations, and now here we are in week 13, and SMU has a chance to make the playoff once again. It's going to be tough, though. If there's a team that can take down anybody, it's the Louisville Cardinals. I trust Jeff Brom to play well, or his team to play well in big games. We've seen it time and time again. Now, when you look at what they can do well, Miller Moss has to play consistently. That has been the biggest key for this team week in and week out. How well can Miller Moss play? Can you get him comfortable? Can you get him in rhythm? And can you get him to find his top playmakers? Chris Bell has been tremendous this year. 67 catches, 871 yards, 6 touchdowns. I think his numbers could be even better. If you had a slightly better quarterback than Miller Moss, you're looking at a guy that's easily over 1,000 yards, maybe even pushing 1,500. That's how good Chris Bell has been. Colin Lacey would also potentially be a 1,000-yard receiver. Those have been their top 2 targets. But this is a team that has relied on the rushing attack more, mostly because the passing attack doesn't have the depth and the consistency at quarterback to be a big-time threat week in and week out. I think that this rushing attack has done a great job in Isaac Brown's absence. Keywan Brown and Duke Watson continue to play at a high level. And this is a guy in Isaac Brown that was averaging 8.6 yards per carry. Keywan Brown has come in and been very good for them. He's averaging 7.3 yards per carry, leads the team with 6 rushing touchdowns, and Duke Watson was a nice complement to him as well. So this rushing attack it came in the year with good depth, and it's consistently been a solid piece for this offense. And when they need to pick up yards, they typically turn to this rushing attack, and those 2 guys have delivered. So if you're looking at how do you beat this team, it's basically making Miller Moss beat you. You're daring him to take some of these deep shots and make some of these tighter throws. And we'll talk about SMU's defense here in just a little bit. Miller Moss has to be consistent, especially early in this game, because if SMU is going to win this one, they're going to rattle him and make sure that he is not in rhythm. And at that point, all they have to worry about is stopping the run. Now, this Louisville defense has plenty of explosive players to defend themselves. That being said, the easiest way that we've seen the Cardinals disrupt an opponent's plan is with their defensive line. When they've needed big plays, this defensive line has stepped up in major moments. And when the spotlight has been really bright, there have been times where this defensive line continues to play at a high level. The James Madison game is the one I always remember, because you look at that James Madison game, the Dukes felt like they have a chance. Now, Isaac Brown had his big moment where he broke open the game. But when James Madison wanted to make a comeback, it was guys like Wesley Bailey, Clev Lobin that stepped up in a big way and made big plays. And that's what they need to do in this one. Kevin Jennings is going to be a tough guy to stop, but he is not immune to mistakes. He is not immune to interceptions. And if you're going to be disruptive, you're going to need those guys to do that. You're going to need them to be disruptive and get into the backfield, because this is an offense that has been inconsistent protecting Kevin Jennings, and he has dealt with injuries. So it's not like his mobility is what it was at the beginning of the year. He's not at 100%. So if there's a group that can make a big impact on this game, it's Louisville's defensive line. And if you're able to slow down this SMU attack, then you are in a great position to potentially win this game. Now, SMU, like I said, SMU has been kind of all over the place this year. We've seen some really good things from them. We've also seen them struggle at times. So when you look at a team that is trying to make a run, I think that SMU is an inconsistent team overall. I mean, even just 3 games ago, they lost to Wake Forest 13-12. They beat Miami two games ago, 26-20, and then they beat Boston College 45-13 on November 8th. But you see the difference of team that you get on a consistent basis. Now, fortunately, the games that they have lost have been teams that you could consider inferior to the ones that they've beaten. Beating Miami was a big win, but when you lose to Wake Forest, when you lose to TCU, Baylor, now you can make an argument that TCU's a good team compared to or along the same lines of SMU, but Baylor's been struggling. So what team are we going to get is probably the biggest question that I have. Which team are we going to see? Are we going to see the one that's dialed in and ready to compete? Or are we going to see the team that is struggling to score points or struggling to get stops? We've seen a lot of different versions of SMU, and I'm very curious which one shows up in this game. Now, like I said, Kevin Jennings having a solid year. And again, coming into this year, I don't think a lot of people gave him the credit he deserved, but here we are. Over 2,800 yards, 21 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Like I said, his mobility has kind of taken a hit with his injuries, and he has not been the version of himself that maybe he wants to be. So how healthy is he going to be for this game? Also, which playmakers can step up if he's not able to go? I think he's still very capable of making the right throws. He's able to put enough velocity on his passes. The rushing attack is going to help him tremendously. They're not going to do a ton of quarterback designed runs. So TJ Arden and Chris Johnson Jr. have been nice when he's needed it. So that rushing attack needs to play a huge role. Now, the passing attack has been interesting to watch because Romello Brinson for the first part of the season was the only consistent piece that we saw. But recently, Jordan Hudson, Yamir Knight, we've seen them step up in a big way, and that's helped this offense. You have 3 guys that have over 400 yards receiving, and they have been very fun to watch against opposing secondaries. Now, this is a Louisville secondary that has its weaknesses, and the speed of SMU could potentially put a ton of stress on them and give them an advantage. It really comes down to the offensive line, though, for SMU. This is a Louisville defensive line that is capable of changing the game by themselves. And if Jennings doesn't have his mobility and he can't escape some of that pressure, then maybe they have an even bigger impact. It comes down to what SMU can do up front. How can they protect their star quarterback? How can they ensure that the rushing attack is consistent? That's going to be a big question that I have coming into this game. SMU is a good team. They have just been inconsistent. And again, the biggest question is going to be which one of them do we get? Which team do we get? Is it the SMU that beat both Clemson and Miami in the same year? Or is it the SMU that is like in the past where they're losing to TCU and Baylor because they just can't get the job done? That's going to be a big question. The stakes are high. The playoff is still on the table for these SMU Mustangs. They are still very much in control of their own destiny, and they can make it to where they want to be. But this is going to be a tough game. Playing at home makes it a little bit easier. They are 3-point favorites, so if you're looking at an advantage, SMU does have that. It really comes down to how disruptive can they be to Miller Moss and how well can they keep their own quarterback upright. I'm going to go with SMU here. I'll pick them to win. I'll pick them to cover too. I think Louisville is a very good football team still that is capable of pulling off an upset. So this is going to be a fun ACC matchup to watch, especially with everything that is still at stake.